Welcome to my live stream. I'm Joshua Kemble. I'm an art director. I've been doing that for about 8 years. I've been a graphic designer and illustrator for over 20 years. And when I'm not working on graphic design and illustration, sometimes I'm waking up super early in the morning. Usually I do these sessions at night, but I thought it would be fun to do a morning work on my graphic novel, which is anyhow. So I've worked on multiple graphic novels. I've made a graphic novel called Two Stories, which is a story about faith and mental illness, trying to destigmatize hard conversations about mental health, and talking about my journey learning how to deal with depression as well as caregive for somebody with panic disorder. And then there's Jacob's Apartment, which is my slice of life story about two young roommates who are both going through tumultuous times in their lives. They're trying to find their identity, figure out their careers, and they're Jacob and Sarah. And Jacob is thrown for a loop when his father is diagnosed with cancer, and he starts kind of questioning his belief systems. And then Sarah, meanwhile, is kind of going through a questioning of her own because of a collapsed relationship, and both of them are kind of struggling to find themselves and their identity, and end up finding each other in a doomed romance, similar to if you took Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind, put it in a blender with Ghost World. You have the flavor of Jacob's Apartment. So if you're into those two things, consider picking up either of those books. They're both available on bookstores everywhere. So I'm pretty sleepy. I just woke up. I literally woke up a little too late to work at night, but I realized I can just do a morning work session to kind of work on colors for the graphic novel that I'm currently doing for Turner Publishing, which is called Not Death But Love, The Strange Supernatural Story of Elizabeth Barrett Browning. It's a historical fiction graphic novel that talks about the Brownings and Elizabeth Barrett Browning, the famous poet's interest in spiritualism and the occult. I'm just kidding, not the occult, but spiritualism and seances. A lot of Victorian themes and Victorian research having to go into the execution of the book. And what we're working on today before I go to work is I'm going to try to knock out the rest of the flat colors for page 76. So it's mostly going to be a work session today. And hopefully, if you guys are working on comics or things like that, you can kind of bust those open. I'm planning on working for an hour or two and live streaming whilst doing that. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But I am still waking up. I got my coffee. Okay, so we got our coffee and we're ready to rock and roll. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my. Ooh, this should have been set up. I'm going to go ahead and go to my art camera. And what you'll see there is the panel that I finished on the top last night when I was streaming and yesterday morning. And that's panel 1. And all we really have left to do on this panel before this stream ends is I would like to color basically panel 2 and 3. So yeah, so we'll see how that goes. Yeah. How is everybody doing? I hope you guys are doing good. I think we'll be able to kind of get these. Everything that's magenta on this basically needs to be colored. So that's the goal today before the stream ends. And again, I don't think this will be the longest stream ever. I do think I want to add, before I kind of get into that, I do want to add a little bit of light because I generally am coloring these pages where they're all flat colors with this tone kind of laid over it. But I do think we could have a little bit of lighting behind Robert, who's sitting on the patio of Casa Guidi, which is their flat in Victorian, I believe, Italy. So, but anyhow, Robert is out on the patio he's had an argument with Elizabeth Barrett Browning, and now he's kind of leaning on the railing and sort of looking off at the city in dismay. And I think this is working really well, but I do think we need a little bit of lighting. So we're going to go ahead and add that, and then we'll see where conversations take us. So I did a really late stream yesterday, and man, toward the end half of the day, it's funny because I might have overdone it a little bit. I think that ended up being like about a 6-hour stream. And so for the rest of the day, I just felt pretty burnt out. This is weird that this isn't having kind of the opacities that I was hoping it would. Let's see here. I got to check my settings on this brush. So anyhow, so I might have actually overdone it just a tiny bit on that. I'm almost thinking like, so I could do color. I could do this white as like a light source, kind of fading a little bit. I don't need to add too much, but I want there to be like a semblance of where this is going to be. But for some reason, the opacity on this has just gotten out of control. So I have to kind of tone it back a little bit. But I want there to be kind of like almost like a glowing light that will be coming from the windows and kind of backlighting Robert a little bit. So we'll see if this ends up helping or hurting. And in general, this is just going to be white, just sort of subtly reminding the viewer. Okay, now suddenly the opacity seems to be back to kind of where it should be. So we'll see. We're gonna kind of push and pull a little bit of light on this page, and we'll see where this kind of takes us. And kind of hopefully be able to knock out a little bit of this. I feel like I'm overdoing it with the light, but we'll see. So I've been thinking a lot about the book and how much I'm actually really excited about getting a third graphic novel done. This whole thing has been a real experiment, in the sense that it's a very different style than I'm used to working in. And that got me thinking about like styles and art, and made me curious to kind of hear people's like experiences. It doesn't seem like a lot of people are up, obviously, because it's a pretty late night stream, or I guess an early morning stream. Usually at minimum I'll have like a night gang kind of stream. So I like the idea of this just being very subtly there. So there's a little bit of light, like we're just kind of establishing just a tiny bit of light behind Robert. And I think that actually does work to kind of set the tone. Okay, I think we'll stick with that and call that finished on the first panel. Okay. And then I did pull open a previous page where we established a little bit of color for like the building that they're in. So this is from page 30. I had pulled that open before the stream. And I mean, basically, I want to just make sure that we're matching a little bit of the color. Okay. So anyhow, the thing I've been thinking about is just stylistic changes and stylistic consistency in art. And I've been kind of thinking about just how interesting and kind of fun it is to allow yourself as an artist to vary your style a bit. Okay, we got like tons of extra stuff, but what I want to see right now in order to execute this, honestly, this may not be the longest stream, which is kind of cool. Because all I need to do is kind of finish up the what I started here. The one thing I also need to do is pull open a page that has Robert and his where you can see Robert's basically like wedding ring, so I can kind of pull that color as well. Because basically what I try to do is keep color kind of as consistent as possible throughout a book. So you'll see this in Jacob's Apartment a lot. That's a full color graphic novel that I did. And when I'm coloring my own work, I think it's really important to kind of try to keep your colors a little bit consistent with your characters. So in this case, this is kind of a well-established palette for Robert, even though there's going to be some shading and stuff like that. So this is me pulling open page 68 because I want to find the color. There it is, that we're using for his ring. And we're going to go ahead and use that for just this little tiny detail here of Robert's ring. So anyhow, the nice thing about varying your style is, let's see, so 2 stories. My first published graphic novel. It's actually my second graphic novel, but the first published one, and then my first one got published second, which was Jacob's Apartment. But for 2 stories, I did everything traditionally. And so everything was like a lot of brushwork and inked. And book 2 will be executed in a really similar fashion. But Jacob's Apartment was done where it was mostly traditionally inked and then digitally colored and lettered digitally. So, but 2 stories was like even the lettering was traditionally executed. And both of those have like really solid ink styles. 2 stories is more kind of done with like a lot of hatching and a lot of textures and stuff like that. Jacob's Apartment was done more with like a really more kind of graphic approach where it has like more solid blacks and stuff like that. 2 stories actually alternates between 2 different styles. So there's one that's a little more representational, and then another that I like to call like a wonky Mary Blair style. And then this book, because it's Victorian in theme and setting, when we pitched it to our original publisher, our publisher has changed during the process because they got bought out by Turner. But initially when we did our first pitch, like we thought it would be cool if it was done almost like those old photographs that are like tinted, or the old kind of method of illustration where they would have color plates separated from black plates. And so the style this is kind of simulating would have been done where the black line art would have been done kind of etched almost, and then the color would have been toned over that. So it's trying to kind of keep a sort of Victorian vibe to the whole execution, and stylistically changing up what you're doing every once in a while can be a really cool thing. It can be very reinvigorating for projects. I feel like if I publish 2 books and the style's almost exactly the same, unless they're, in a series, I feel like you do kind of risk as an artist, like total burnout, and not just that, like lack of growth. So there's a few things I'm doing with this that are a little different for style. Like I'm not ruling all my lines. On my previous 2 books, I would rule out every single line, including the panel borders, and use like circle templates and stuff. And in this case, it's a much more kind of organic, free-flowing style. And it's been interesting kind of changing up the execution of the style. Right now, by the way, what I'm doing is selecting the railing that Robert is standing next to. And basically in this sequence, the lights in panel 2 will be on in the windows behind him, and then they will shut off. So this is like Robert kind of out on the patio after an argument with Elizabeth, and he's sort of looking out at the city. He's a little pensive, and the lights will go out. And after I finish the colors on this, I plan on doing thumbnails and roughs for the next, hopefully like something like 10 pages. Because I talked about this on a live stream as well. I don't know if I've talked about this on a vlog, but I had a really interesting conversation with Jim Lujan where we were talking about kind of keeping your momentum on a project, and he had recommended that I change up my pattern a little bit to kind of keep things fresh, and I think it was really good advice, so I'm going to take it. Because like, you know, we were talking about it, and it's like when you're working on a big project like this and you're used to working on bigger projects, the problem becomes different than your initial problem. Your initial problem as an artist is going to be to, let me look at the, I got to pull up another page that we finished. It's crazy when you start getting into closer to 100 pages on a project and you have to like reference previous pages just to make sure you're like being consistent. Because with sequential work, right, you want to make sure, you know, the environment didn't change. There have already been like a few times where, you know, I'm drawing like a, oh, here we go. This will work. There've already been a few times where I'm drawing like a room or something, and then I forget to like have a chair, you know, in it. That's like a core, a very important chair. Let's see here. Okay, so we're gonna have this be, okay. So he's next to a tree. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And then I want to deselect every branch of that tree. So you can quote me on the fact that I said this probably won't take that long. Okay, so anyhow, like I was saying about kind of changing things up. So there's this initial problem when you're trying to take on doing a graphic novel or working on a comic book, where at first your problem is establishing like a consistent time frame where you're going to be working. So a lot of the time, like as a young cartoonist, your biggest struggle in getting comics done is going to be like buckling down and like learning how to overcome hardship and resistance, like your own resistance, right? Because taking on a big art project is always going to be a little bit challenging. And so a lot of the initial thing is almost similar to like if you were starting a new workout or something like that. Like half the battle of doing your first, you know, graphic novel or comic book is really just overcoming resistance, sitting down and building habits to be able to kind of consistently work on a body of work. And that's kind of your initial challenge, right? Is like trying to figure out, how do I establish a routine to where I can like, consistently work on something and get it done. So that's like challenge number one. That's the young cartoonist's challenge. Or and that would apply to animation. That's why like Jim Lujan gave me a call a couple weeks ago to talk about this. It's like that's your first goal as an animator too. Like if you're an indie animator, a lot of the first challenges are just like sitting down and getting the work done, and like developing habits and routines to where you're able to kind of execute and get things done. As you progress though, the challenge is more like keeping it interesting and keeping yourself engaged, um, and keeping that routine that you've established from like burning you out entirely. And so, I loved Jim's suggestion of, when your struggle isn't like when your struggle is trying to, as an artist, is trying to just sit down and get the work done. Initially you just kind of have to establish a routine. But when your struggle is an established routine and the potential of burnout, I think, and for a fact that you have that routine kind of set, like you're not going to break your pattern that you've kind of committed to getting work done. Sometimes just kind of changing it up just a little bit, without deviating from the goal of getting it done, obviously, especially with a publisher. You can't, just change your deadline all the time. But to keep it interesting, you can just kind of change it up just like slightly and change up your routine. So it's kind of equivalent to, I guess, if you're exercising, kind of like having like a leg day. You have like your regular day where you're doing like upper body work, and then your leg day where you do legs. And then maybe like the next time you do upper body, you work the same muscles, but you do a different routine, right? That can keep your exercises interesting and keep you challenged and engaged in the process. And that's kind of what Jim recommended, and I think I'm going to try it. So I'm going to subtly shift my routine just a little bit on when it comes to roughs. I think I'm just going to do a bigger batch of roughs, um, and try that for like 10 pages and see how that goes. Do a bigger batch of roughs. Maybe after doing that, I do some other stuff in a little bit different of order from what I'd usually do. I also realize like it's so early in the morning that I'm saying things like different of order instead of a different order. But that is the nature of working in the wee hours of the morning. So yeah, so my goal is to try to kind of get these knocked out before I have to kind of get ready for work and stuff. So I'm hoping, in theory, that this will take not as much time to get done. So the wall is going to be easy. The lighting is going to be interesting to establish, because whatever the windows are in the second panel here are going to be light and most likely probably white. And then in the next panel, the light's going to be turned off. So that means that I might backlight the character and this tree, but the flat colors will relatively remain the same. The rendering will mildly change. And I think that'll, potentially, we might be able to wrap up by like 5. We'll see. But anyhow, it is an interesting place to get to as a cartoonist, where you can kind of get to a point where, once you've overcome that initial obstacle, other obstacles come along. It's a very fascinating journey, this whole art thing. um, it's I do think like one of the great things about art And this is something that kind of bums me out about AI, and I hope it doesn't kind of ruin this for artists. There is something to be said for the process of art is very much a process of willpower and overcoming um, self doubt, as well as facing fear and also self discipline. Like, there's a huge part of art that has a lot to do with self discipline. Some art is more spontaneous, and like a little more, I guess, free. But at the same time, like most artists I know, at least most cartoonists, a lot of it's just self discipline. It's like, can you sit at an art table for long periods of time and be with a project for a long period of time? Now, the only experience I can speak to with comics is, very much from like an indie cartoonist perspective. Um, I'm not like outputting, 24-page comics every month or something like that. That would be a crazy schedule, but I already kind of have, you know, my day job of art directing. And then this is the stuff I do for passion or for love. And so these are like very much like art projects. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, they're meant for commercial use, but it's like so the experience that I can speak from is more from somebody who, you know, is making these books, um, but not making them like quite at the schedule that like I think a Marvel artist or something would be doing. And I think the approach obviously would shift a little bit depending on the kind of comics you want to do. I've talked about this on stream too before, but like something else that's interesting that I find always challenging is as artists we all kind of have our own timelines. Like, some of us are like way quicker than others. And in a commercial setting, you just kind of have to get real fast. you, you just it is kind of there is a little bit of speed that makes a massive difference in commercial art. But when you're working on these kind of like indie comics, it's like there's people I know who are incredibly fast artists. Someone who comes to mind is Dave Baker, who we've had on Artcasters. He's a friend of Jim Luhan's. And it's like he has a book coming out from Top Shelf pretty soon. And it looks like a really cool, like meta, just incredibly ambitious project. But his output is like very admirable. He's been nominated for an Eisner and stuff too. But his output is just like unbelievable. Like, I have no idea how he puts out the amount of work he does. And I think as a cartoonist, like it's funny, but there's so many times where I think we're looking at other cartoonists and kind of assuming that other cartoonists have it figured out, or that it's faster for them, or wow, they put out so much work, how do they do it? And I think a lot of the time, even that project, from what I understand, there was like a massive amount of years that he had put into that. But it is one of those things where a lot of the time the story you read, um as a cartoonist, is like the overnight success story, right? And so we're kind of seeing these glimpses of the art process, but it can be very disorienting, I think, for an artist who's in it. Because when you're in it and you're kind of working on these things, it just seems like I've talked to Gary Hodges about this too. We've both talked about how working on comics kind of feels like you're working in slow motion. And so when you're working in slow motion and then you're looking around and it's like you're seeing these people and it feels like they're working in fast motion. And a lot of that's because on the day to day when you're in the grind, it's like very slowly making progress. Whereas to people outside, your slow speed might look like the fastest thing on earth, or like something really incredible. Whereas when you're in the weeds, and you're building this thing, it's just like, dude, it feels it feels like a drag, um but it's interesting. I don't know, it's interesting to me that that doesn't, I don't know, I always think it's funny, like the idea of all of us as cartoonists kind of working on our stuff. Nice. Christopher Runciman, who has a great live stream. I watched a bit of his stream yesterday. He does a lot of one-page comics, kind of almost on demand, where you can kind of check out his stream, give him suggestions, and he'll make one-page comics based on those suggestions. And he's a very fast and talented cartoonist. Christopher's in chat. Morning. Yeah, I woke up early. Yesterday, because I did that long stream. When I got home from work, this is the funny thing. So the wife's out of town, visiting family, and as is my son. And so like, um, I'm in this scenario where I can kind of work on whatever schedule I need to, because that level of my responsibilities, as long as I'm feeding my dogs and taking care of stuff around the house, it's like I can kind of function on whatever schedule works for me and allows me to still get to work and maintain. But it is funny because it's like when my wife is really good at keeping me balanced on my time, and not in like a negative way. It's not like she's like bossing me around, but she will kind of give me a heads up and be like, hey, you might need to get some sleep or something like that. And it's funny when she's gone for a bit, it's like, man, I default to like crazy obsessive artist Josh. And so I start working at like just weird hours, or doing things like this morning where I'm like, because yesterday I kind of overdid it. I slept when I got home. And then when I woke up, it was this morning, and I was like, it's early, but I can work on some comics. This is the I will say, if you're out there and you're a single cartoonist, be careful, take care of yourself. We can get kind of crazy with our schedules, But it is funny, it kind of reminds me of like college age me. I used to be very strange with my hours. And I've talked about this on stream before too. Some of that I think stems from, when I was early in college, I did a job that had graveyard shifts for like years. Um, and I think that like screwed up. I mean, I've always been a night person, but I think that like screwed up my sense of day and night for like the rest of my life. Yeah. Christopher was saying when the partner's away, the artist will work away. Exactly. Christopher was also saying, I think you're quite productive. Long form works have a lot of demands that many can't do. Thank you, Christopher. But it's interesting to me, like, because I look at like what you're doing, Christopher, and it's very stunning. It's an interesting thing to think about. To me, all of us artists looking at other artists that we know. I talked about this on a stream where I said that I can't even remember what I called it. I think I called the video "Comic Books Suck." But I was just trying to kind of have a conversation a lot of cartoonists I don't think have, which is, I think art is hard. Art is a hard process. And I think sometimes artists can kind of oversell the joy of art, which, by the way, there is massive joy in art. And I think that's got its place. But I do think, um, because a lot of artists aren't going to be like posting on Instagram, like, oh man, this thing sucked. It took me 2 years to do or something. They're just going to say, hey, check out my thing that, I did. It's pretty cool. You can get this like false perception that there's no struggle in the process. And then when you're struggling in the process, you can start getting this like false picture that like you're alone in that struggle. And so I do think it's funny to start thinking about that. Like a lot of the artists that I know that I look at, I'm like, okay, they've got it figured out. They're having fun with this process. Most of them are hating the process too. So I don't know. I feel like show me an artist who's not having any sort of difficulty with their art, and I'll show you a liar. That's my point. um, that's kind of my take on it. That might be a cynical take, but I'm a big fan of like, I don't know what it is about my personality that I like real conversations. I like hearing what's really going on with people. I think that's the storyteller in me. Um where it's like one of the hardest things for me to do as a human being is like small talk conversations. like, you know, like workplace morning conversations where you're like, "Hey, how's it going?" like don't get me wrong. I like, as you guys know, if you've watched my streams or like if you've ever seen how goofy as hell I get in Christopher's chats when he's streaming, you know, I'm not saying you can't be silly or have fun or be cordial or be like emotionally intelligent. I think these are important skills to have in life. But I think that part of me, and this is the part of me that's probably pretty autistic, is like for me that small talk stuff is just, it feels like drudgery. It's hard. It's really difficult for me. Whereas I know people who like that's how it feels when they talk about, really heavy things. Like a lot of people I know are like the reverse, where they have no problem having small talk, but if they have to talk about their feelings or something, they're like, "Oh, this is awful." Whereas I'm like, I want to hear all the stuff that you wouldn't say when you ask somebody, "Hey, how's it going?" Uh, Christopher said, "Artists greatly benefit from grounding parties in their life. All artists work towards balancing creative expression with happiness." Nice. And then Christopher also, I think, in response to me hating small talk, said, "How about those Mets?" Yeah, I hate that stuff. And I can do that, but I feel like, I don't know, people's actual experiences of life are like so much more interesting, you know. Part of why I like watching debates or whatever, it's like politics can be really boring. And the older I get, even though I am very passionate about my beliefs and stuff like that, my personal proclivity towards like even getting into those subjects is it's getting less and less the older I get. Like the more I'm just like, look, I know what I believe, you know what you believe. Let's be cool, you know. But I do like watching debate and philosophical conversations and stuff like that, or like ethical exercises, like things like this that I'll watch on stream sometimes. And I think part of why I like those things is they start getting to the core of things that are a little bit more interesting to me than just like your favorite baseball team, you know? Um, and I think that's the writer in me, you know? It's like I want to know what makes people tick. I also have a tiny little dog who's coming by to say hello. Come here. You can come up. Did you say hi? I don't know what he's trying to say. If you want to sit on my lap, you can, dude. But if not, I gotta work. You good? Yeah, I don't know what he was trying to say. He kind of came up to me and like tapped my leg. Oh, do you want up? Okay. I don't know what he's doing. I think he's trying to get me to sit next to him. Um, the dogs, of course, are going to be. Yeah, the dog is basically saying, "What are you doing, man?" So, I am one of those dog owners who totally our dogs sleep in bed. They usually will like sleep on or at my foot or something. Here he is again. Wish you guys could see this. He's really cute. This is my sister-in-law's dog. Here you go. Here he is. He's like a tiny little guy. See. But I think he was just lonely because I think he was feeling like very much like Christopher was saying, you know, dude, it's really early. So I'm gonna let him sit on my lap and we'll see how that goes. Check this dog out though. Look at that. You see this little guy? If you don't think that's cute, I don't know what's wrong with you. He's a, well, let me show you guys one more time. You see this little dude? Yeah. He just came up to me like, to pow. He's sleepy. Yeah, sleepy dog. Yeah, so the dog was not happy about the what was going on there. Hopefully he'll just chill. We'll see. Maybe he'll be content on my lap. He was sleeping away with it next to Bernie, his brother. And then that happened. So anyhow, where was I? I feel like the dog kind of distracted me. Not a bad distraction though. This is why dogs are really good to have. It's good to have a dog. You know, you're trying to say something, dude. You know what? I think I need to put this dog in his dog bed. That is what we will do. So I'm gonna put him in his dog bed so he can go back to bed. I'll be right back. I'll put on a trailer for let's see. What do you think? What do you think, Scotch? Should we put on the trailer for Jacob's apartment? Let's put on the trailer for Jacob's apartment. Oh, wait. Never mind. He's relaxed. Okay. I thought I was going to have to go put him. Christopher was saying that dog is very small. Yes, I think he's too small. When my sister-in-law first moved in with us, I was really thrown off because I've always had like mid-sized dogs. I like small dogs, but not like microscopic dogs. And we had an interesting dynamic, this dog and I, where, you know, I had never had a Chihuahua. And so I wasn't familiar with like how much they they kind of front. And it's like, so he's definitely one of those dogs that's like a real sweetheart, but man, he'll growl at you and kind of give you grief and do very Chihuahua-ish things. And so at first I was like, man, this dog is just like frightening, you know. And then like 2 days in, I realized he's just like he's a sweet dog. He's just got like a bulldog front, like where he was bred so tiny. I think the people who bred this dog just made him so impossibly small that the entire world to him is like this giant threat, and so he has to like run around being like "Arr," to everything. But at the end of the day, he's a really cute dog. He's a really good dog. But we're getting there, guys. This is gonna take a while, but we're getting further. He's actually sleeping on my right down here. You see that? It's kind of cute. Anyhow, let's see here. Oh yeah, so we were talking about small talk, right? And I think it's the artist, the writer in me that doesn't like small talk. You know, when you're writing like a conflict scene or something, and it's like, let's say you're writing a story about like two roommates getting in an argument or something. You know, this is just like basic writing 101, right? For like believable dialogue or believable scenarios. So if you have like two roommates and they're having a conflict, you know, quite often it's going to be they're doing dishes and somebody freaks out about you never do the dishes or something like that. And then the conflict kind of spills out of there, or it's like, you know, spills out of let's see, I'm trying to think of another roommate okay, this would be a really good one. This is a conflict I had with a roommate in college who used to eat my food all the time. um you know, things like that. But quite often you'll have like that kind of thing, like an argument over um you're writing dialogue. Maybe you have an argument over, hey, I had a piece of cheesecake in the freezer, how could you eat that cheesecake or something. But it's not about the cheesecake, right? And as a writer, you have to be aware of that. Like when you're writing it, it's like you're not writing a conflict scene about cheesecake. You're writing about the dynamic of these two people, right? So you have to be a little bit meta with your perception of things, right? Like you have to read into things a little bit further, a little bit deeper than like your average person is going to be reading into things in order to kind of more effectively write. I have to say, I'm really digging having the dog on my lap whilst working. It's kind of a nice little comforting experience here whilst working on this. So anyhow, because we're having to look at things on like a second layer, you know, we're looking at the layer deeper because we have to construct from the deeper to like the like point being, when you're writing, if you have small talk, you have a reason for the small talk. You know what's behind the small talk, right? So you're having to work from the deeper to the shallow, right? And you're using the shallow to signify something much deeper. And I think because of that, it's like it's really hard to engage in the shallow. Because you're like, oh man, can we talk about the deeper, you know, thing? I don't know where I was going with that. It was just an interesting thing. Oh, I think so. Here's the thing. I think it's very easy though, because of that, because we're kind of like more looking at the meta of things. I think it's very easy for artists to get very interior oriented. I remember I wrote about this in Two Stories Book 2, but I remember in college I had a really great professor who was a bit of a mentor to me. And I had gone through a really hard experience in college, that like an experience that could have like ruined a lot of people. And I wrote about it in Two Stories and stuff. And I'm not trying to avoid it. I just don't want to tread on well trodden territory. But needless to say, it was a pretty traumatic experience. And I remember this professor met with me after that experience, knowing that about the experience, and wanted to talk to me. And their advice was, as artists, we keep things internal. And then we kind of communicate them visually because we have really rich internal experiences. Like an artist is, in theory, having a lot going on that we're communicating visually, right? We're deep people. And his thing was like, just, after that whole experience, make sure you're not keeping it too interior, right? Like make sure you actually express that, like beyond just like with your art. And it was good advice, because I think that is something we all potentially can be a little prone to, is like the idea of like kind of keeping those things internalized or only externalized through our art, and not let that rich landscape of thoughts or ideas like be expressed verbally to like people around us, or to friends or something like that. Writers tend to want the most of stories more than the side dish potato weather business. Exactly. But I do kind of feel like it's interesting to me that like it's always fascinating to me to see people struggling to talk about things that I think are really interesting. And then the things that I feel like are like pulling nails on a chalkboard are things that like a lot of people just find completely easy to engage in, when it comes to small talk and stuff like that. It's kind of a funny thing. Some of that is being an artist, and then I think some of that is possibly also autism, where it's like it's hard to have it's just hard to have shallow conversations. um that's my read on it. Okay, let's see here. We're going to I do want to show off this cute little dog real quick, as corny as it is. So we finished the tree on panel 2. We might have to just be happy with one panel being finished this morning. I may not be able to finish the entirety of this. Check out this dog. You see this? I literally have this tiny little cutie just resting on my arm, He's funny. Anyhow, he's funny because he, like, again, you wouldn't, like, this side of the dog that you're seeing on stream, that's not a side of this dog a lot of people see. Because if you came over here, This dog would just be like all growly and baring his teeth and like feel like he's like one of those guys who buys like a Ford F-150 and he's like 2 feet tall. you know, um, there's a lot of those guys in the AV. It's always funny to me. They'll have like a giant truck, like a huge, ridiculous truck. Like the truck takes up like half a street to park. A pickup truck. No dissing on pickup trucks, but I'm just saying it's always funny when the guy gets out of the pickup truck and they're jacked. Like you can tell they hit the gym. They probably take like testosterone supplements. Like they're just like very um oriented on like all of that, but they're like, you know, they're also quite often like 4 feet tall. I don't know. I am I crazy? I see that all the time here in the area I live. It's usually a big white Ford F-150, and again, like I said about the dishes thing with like conflict with roommates. If you're writing a character that's obsessed with muscles and giant cars, don't forget to make them 4 feet tall. Christopher said, the weird thing I noticed about those guys is they tend to spit a lot. Yeah. They're becoming a sub race of humanity. Yeah. And every once in a while, the truck will have those, what do they call them? Like truck nuts or something on them. They're like, yeah. Or they'll have the Calvin peeing thing. That's like the market. The people who buy the Calvin peeing sticker, the worst heresy to a cartoonist. Like most cartoonists, if they see that sticker, it's just going to make their blood boil a little bit because we know enough about Calvin and Hobbes to know that is not a licensed image of Calvin. Okay. But the market for that is the guy I was describing, you know, who's got his raised F-150 and his truck nuts. But he's not compensating at all. That's not what he's doing. Anyhow, I will say that's probably like a good percentage of people I live near. A good percentage. But that's funny, Christopher. I totally agree. It is interesting because the spitting, and usually like before the spitting, it's like a big like snort, but it's like a snort and then and then. Oh my gosh, I have a tiny little adorable dog. Anyhow, so the reason I was bringing that up wasn't to riff on those guys. I was just bringing that up because this dog, if he were a human being, would be that guy. I mean, at his heart, he's this tiny little adorable dude, but he puts on a big front, puts on a big front. He would be driving the biggest truck, raised the highest it possibly could go. He wouldn't have a pair of truck nuts on his truck. He would have 5 of them. He probably would have a collection of guns. That's this dog. This dog is that guy. And who can blame him? because this dog is like the tiniest thing on the planet. Oh yeah, that's a good point. Christopher was saying, don't forget the Punisher logos. Oh yeah, usually they'll have like a flag with a thin blue line on it. Saying something about colors not bleeding or something. I don't know. I don't know if you guys remember the meme. Um, there was a meme, like, you know how quite a lot of those guys will have the "Don't Tread on Me" flag. Um, there was a meme that went around like a year or so ago that was hilarious, where it was the snake from the "Don't Tread on Me" flag, and it said, "We like cops now." There's another one I can't remember, but it's like something like, I think they say something about snakes in Italian or something. It's like something snack. Anyhow, yeah. Memes are funny. Mornings are exhausting, you guys. I'll have a lot of energy on a night stream, but a morning stream is going to be an interesting one. Christopher was saying that's too funny. That dog would be those guys, especially when they try to fight. You want to go, bro? You want to go circling each other for an hour? Oh yeah, he's definitely. Um, I forget who said this, but somebody talked about those semi fights as like a nipple contest, where it's like two guys just trying to chest bump each other. What, bro? What, bro? You coming at me? Usually a lot of bro. Um, yeah, wonderful energy. If I don't stream tonight, you guys will know they came for me. I talked about their precious F-150 and shall not return whole. But yeah, I could definitely see this dog being like, "You looking at me, bro?" So I missed a line here that I'm going to have to add, but I'm going to go ahead and flat it. There's also a little space where I missed the leaves, and that's okay. That's okay. Everything's fine. I will say though, this dog is one of the sweetest dogs in the world. And it's funny because he weighs like nothing. So he's sitting on my lap, and it like feels like I have a piece of paper, a warm piece of paper, just laying on my lap. And he's out. He's sleeping right now. He was like, "You are crazy, dude." Okay, so we're gonna do this, and potentially it's actually kind of nice. I like it. Okay. Christopher said, "So funny. There is a writer artist version of small talk trying to break down a character's personality." Yeah, 100%. I think I think the thing that's weird too, it's not just a writer thing too, because I want to be clear. Like, I think it's an artist thing. Because when you're an artist, right? Like a good example of this would be like 101 Dalmatians. There's like this scene in that movie. It's one of the funniest things I've seen visually. And it's when like you're just observing. It's like at the very beginning from what I recall. It's been a while since I've seen it. But you're just observing these people walking their dogs. And it's just so funny, and it's partially funny because it's true. It's like it's visually true. It's like these people walking dogs that look like them. And so like they're walking these dogs and it looks exactly like them. I'm sorry, I said the W word. I can't say that around a dog. Hi there. You okay? Where you heading, dude? Where you heading? You want it up there? I can't really draw with you on my shoulder, my dude. I don't know if you hear this yawning and the that he's doing. Okay. Okay, guys. I think that's getting us closer to done. But we might have to finish up this page tomorrow. So I think what I'm going to do is the lighting on this panel, and then we'll finish the last panel tonight. So nice. Christopher was saying this page is looking great. I was interested to see it in color when you drew it. Yeah, I think this dog is telling me we got to go back to bed. You okay, bud? It's funny too because I don't know where he's wanting to go. Are you gonna go down, or are you just gonna sleep there? I guess I can just kind of let you hang out there, but that's a hard spot to work on art. Here, I gotta put you on my lap, my dude. There you go. You're okay. He's so funny. He's just like being a really funny little dog. Sorry about that, guys. Okay. So what we're going to do is a little bit of the backlighting on this character, and then we're going to call it, because this was kind of a crazy stream to do in the morning. But that'll give me enough time to have a little tiny power nap before going to work. Christopher said this page is looking great. I was interested to see color when you drew it. Thank you. But anyhow, so the thing I was talking about with the sorry, Scotch. I have to actually draw my dude. Do you want it down? You want to go down? No. Oh, there you go. There you go. Okay. I think he decided he was going back to bed. He's like, dude, you're crazy. But anyhow, so we'll do the backlighting real quick. Which shouldn't take too long. So now it's working right. Okay, good. let me double check one thing. So anyhow, the thing I was talking about with the that scene in 101 Dalmatians with the dog, right? With the people are like each person's walking their dog, so it's like this lady walking a dog with like long legs. It's like a greyhound type dog, and it's a lady with like long legs and a long nose. And their gait and their movements and everything are like so funny because the dogs look like the people. And that scene, I can almost guarantee you, came from an animator at a dog park or at a park that was observing people who kind of looked like their dogs. Like, and that probably came from reality, right? That's part of why it's funny. Like, humor is always funny because it's an observation. And quite often it's funny because it's an observation of something we've all seen, but you just wouldn't think to comment on or say anything about. Well, I think this little guy wants back up. Yeah, he is definitely. You want back up, bud? Come here. Oh, okay. He didn't want back up. He just wants me to go back to bed. The dog is effectively, um, you know, being a good Samaritan and telling me, dude, it's still bedtime. Anyhow, we'll do the backlighting and then call it for the stream. But anyhow, like, so humor is funniest when it has like elements of truth and observation, and quite often it's an astute observation that we all see or we've all heard or we've all thought, but like nobody would say it. It's usually a really funny thing, or you wouldn't think to notice it or think to say it, but like once it's brought up, you're like, oh yeah, I have seen that, right? And visually, I think as artists, we're picking up those cues all the time. Like your average, human being is going to be looking at a sunset and thinking, wow, that's beautiful. Whereas an artist is going to be looking at it and looking at the color in the sky and how it's casting a complementary shadow on the clouds. You start kind of analyzing why it's pretty or why it's funny. And then you store that and you use it, like it's like a tool. That's way too much light, by the way. We're going to decrease it, but I want it to be, actually want it to be a little exaggerated at first, and then we'll kind of erase away. So I might be going a little too far, and then we'll pull back with the whites. Little dog is like, go to bed, bro. Don't make me make you go to bed. For sure. He is a cute dog in the sense that one of my other favorite things about this dog, he is like all about the naps. Like one of his favorite things in the world is like sleeping on a bed next to somebody sleeping. He just like, he loves it. It's like it's his jam. Like that nap activities are when he puts on MC5, That was a deep music cut. I feel like Christopher will know that call out if I'm saying jam and MC5. I think Christopher knows what I'm talking about there. So we're just kind of decreasing the white a little bit now. We don't want to end up in that like muddy territory where you start kind of almost creating like white grays. You don't want to push it too far. That's definitely a weakness of mine when I'm working on adding light. You can push it a little too far. Have it be a little more subtle. It's funny, I don't usually render in this way either, but it's just the style that I picked for this project. And that's where we can kind of start getting closer to wrapping, because I think we started this stream talking about style. and shifting your styles, and how fun that can be. And it looks like we're getting closer to ending it on the same topic. Yeah, Christopher knows. He knows kick out the jams. I was thinking about it too. It's like you guys aren't too far from the. Well, I don't know. I feel like Canada and Detroit. Am I crazy? It doesn't feel like that's. I feel like there's got to be a little bit of overlap because I feel like Michigan shares a lot of kind of weather and patterns. Not all of Canada, but that part of Canada is going to be pretty similar. We had to get rid of that little gray, and we'll add just a tiny highlight. So yeah, I hope you guys are having a good morning. I think it's probably a different time for a lot of you guys. It is for me, but I hope you guys have a productive art day. And I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. We're just going to kind of make the light shining a little more from the windows. I have this on a separate layer too. I think we'll because here's the thing, I want it to contrast pretty heavily because on the last panel, the panel at the very end of this page, we're going to have that light turn off. So I want it to be a little exaggerated how bright that light is coming from the windows. We could have gone with like a different tone than white, but I think that white was the way to go, especially because we're trying to kind of keep that toned photograph vibe to this art. I don't like the light on the railing too much though, so we'll fix that in a second. And again, it's just pushing and pulling, I feel like if this were Christopher Runciman's stream, he'd be saying we're just adding our little fiddly bits and babs, bits and bops. I I absolutely love that actually when I'm watching Christopher's stream and he uses that. I actually think it's pretty awesome. That's all I'm saying. If you guys haven't yet, you should subscribe to Christopher Runciman. He'll probably be streaming. Christopher, are you streaming later today? I've found that it usually is like a little bit before lunchtime at my work when you tend to stream. I need to fix that on his hand. What was that nonsense? What was that nonsense? Yeah, so we've had an interesting stream. We've talked about F-150 drivers, crazy little chihuahuas, talked about artist perceptions. This is actually coming out pretty good. I like this page. I don't like the light here. I feel like again, like I gotta pull it back just a tiny bit. Get a little less, a little more subtle. Time to kick out the jams, guys. But yeah, I feel like we covered a lot of fun stuff. That's gonna do it for this stream. So we're gonna call it on 2 panels, and then we'll finish this last panel tonight. But I am digging that business. Let's see here. Yeah, Christopher said same scene here in Ontario. Nice. And then he said he'll be streaming at 2 p.m. Eastern Time daily and 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So I will see you in the chats, Christopher. I'll be watching from work, and I'm going to go catch like an hour of sleep before I have to go to work. Get up and feed the dogs and do all that fun stuff. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out. Pretty awesome to make progress. Appreciate you guys, and make comics, not war. And I'll see you guys on this stream probably later tonight. So goodbye. Oh, real quick, if you haven't yet, hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button so you're subscribed to this channel, and the bell so you get notifications when we're about to go live. Hitting that like goes a long way and helps these streams get a lot more viewers. All right, guys, I'm going to go get some rest before I become a loopy lunatic. All right, have a good night, guys. Bye.